good evening, everybody.
Hello, hello, and welcome to a special plague episode special of. I'm so sick that I couldn't even say it. Welcome to Plague Week. It's like
Y-
Shark Week, but with head colds.
Yes, yes, the plague week version of Critique Corner with me, Daniel Parker.
And me, DB Fastbinder. And despite the efforts of whatever crud is going around to knock us out, we're doing our best.
Yes, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
s-
We're
s- Speaking of doing our best, quick disclaimer: this is an AI generated image of a bobcat with a thermometer and a cold compress on its head. It, if you object to that, I'm sorry. Um, what's funny is that speaking of not doing things right, uh, more than three-quarters of the images had the thermometer facing the wrong way, so you just
yeah,
on the wrong end.
yes. So AI art is not there yet,
No, it is not.
and hey, Ninja, good to see you. And it looks like we've got a new viewer, Fat
That
Boy 7609.
that that's he's a friend of mine.
Oh, all right.
Here to
Well, good to
join
see
us.
you. Yeah, good to see you. And yes, yeah, Stevie is so sick he turned into a cat.
Yep, but we'll try to keep on trucking.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Well, we'll brave our colds and give you all a good show, hopefully. But if you're returning, like Ninja, welcome back. If you're new, what we normally do is we do some reviews. We talk about something new and then something old, mixed in with some things that one of us has watched on our own. Um, but before we get into all of that, let's see if I can. I'm going to be in control of the screen tonight, so. Uh, but we're going to be talking about box office, and I have it on the wrong movie right now. So I've got it on the wrong thing. Let me change that real quick. I'm doing this live. All right, there we go.
Um, well, let's hear. So Fat Boy asks, "What about Borrowed and Blue?" Um, well, we don't try to curse too much. The background is very blue.
Yes, that's true.
As far as borrowed, we watched everything on streaming. So there you go.
Yeah, there you
Actually,
go.
no, I one of them my thing I watched on a Blu-ray, but the rest of it was all on streaming, so it was borrowed.
Yes, yeah. Um, but yeah, so we talk about the previous weekend's box office, which uh, not a whole lot changing once again. It is January.
Yeah, and it's a January in a year without a whole lot of new releases. I was listening to a video going over it, and there are some months this year that have half as many wide releases coming out as there were last year.
Yeah, and you could probably chalk that up to a number of things. Maybe the all the pandemic movies getting getting all dumped at the same time.
Yep,
Um, you also had the you had the strikes from last fall. Probably delayed a few release. I know delayed at least one movie.
right. Late Dune.
Yeah. But probably delayed a few other things, and so yeah, that's not a lot to see.
Yep. And speaking of not a whole lot to see, there aren't a whole lot. It's basically the same story we've had: Mean Girls, Beekeeper, Wonka, Migration, and anybody but you or anyone but you trading the top five with each other.
Yeah. And interesting thing to note with the Beekeeper, it is now available on digital.
Yeah, I don't know that they were expecting it to have the legs it had.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah, it's let's see, it's yeah 103 million total, 43 million domestic. Let's see.
Yeah, is this like China thing or no?
No, it hasn't been released in China yet. It's looks like mainly Australia, UK, which that tracks. I mean, UK tracks with Statham.
Right. And I can see his brand of mayhem playing well in Australia.
Oh yeah, yeah. But yeah, good there.
Then, as far as other interesting things, Godzilla minus one returns to the top 10 because they got a whole bunch of new theaters to show the black and white edition.
Yeah.
I've heard mixed things on that one, whether it's worth it or not. Um, my suspicion is that since the movie was not made to be seen in black and white, there will be scenes that it looks good with. Like I would imagine that initial scene on the island at night will look good,
Mm,
but all the daylight scenes with the warships and everything, and the city he destroyed will look kind of washed out. But
yeah.
that's just a theory.
Yeah. 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 Some movies just aren't made to. They're made in color, aren't made to be in black and white.
Right? They aren't all Zack Snyder's Justice League,
Yeah.
which boy, I remember. I'm old enough to remember when I was told that the intended format was 4:3 in black and white. Awful lot of color in that movie when that came out. Interesting, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. And Fat Boy says, "Sucks to be a movie theater." Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. Like they're having to release concert movies of like Queen from the '80s and Taylor Swift and Beyonce and stuff.
Yeah.
And you would think that. Uh, so I actually remember last summer I was proposing that what Disney should have done for some of those dead zones was to re-release some of the movies they put straight to streaming during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Uh, you're not going to find Soul on that list because they yanked it after 2 weeks. Because after 2 weeks in the U.S., the darn thing did not manage to crack $1 million.
Ooh.
Um, for in the second weekend, some of those theaters were basically clocking in an average of 2 people a showing.
Geesh. Well, I mean, you're having people pay for something that they can watch at home on Disney Plus for quote unquote free. I mean,
Yeah, you kind of got to. I think if you're going to do a re-release of some of these streaming things, Netflix would probably have an easier time with this because there are some beloved action and comedy movies that they've come out with that I could see people wanting to see on the big screen.
yeah, yeah, none of them come to mind right now, but yeah.
Let's see here.
But
Adam Project could possibly do well.
oh yeah, yeah,
You could do. There are some anime movies that they've had come straight to Netflix that they could do a re-release of that would bring in the Weeb audience.
oh yeah, like Black Clover.
Yeah, yeah. That would be one to throw in there if they didn't already. You could also theoretically, if Amazon wanted to get more into it, you could do that Samaritan movie with Stallone. That I don't think a lot of people remember very much, but like put it out in a limited release. And
Yeah,
but I guess for kids movies, if you can just watch it, it's like, mommy, I want to see Soul. Okay, let me just get a free trial to Disney Plus, and we're set.
yeah, yeah.
The only other new component of the top 10 is Fighter at number six, an Indian movie, which from the name I would assume is an action movie.
Yeah, I'm assuming that too. Not a whole lot of no, not a whole lot is known about it. There's no
Uh, At
plot
least,
synopsis or
at least the numbers doesn't know a lot about it.
yeah. Um, Although they added uh let's see,
Yeah,
they
you're
added 900 screens. Yeah.
yep. So, and it has a very respectable per theater average. And that's the thing is that these Indian movies that come in, you're looking at Poor Things.
Oh, sorry.
Uh,
Oh, okay. That okay. That explains a lot.
yeah. Um, but these Indian
Yeah.
movies, they don't necessarily like they might have a more muted box office, but on a per theater average, they tend to do very well for themselves.
Yeah. I mean for 4.2 million on a uh, you know 662 theaters. Yeah. Five, 5,500 per theater. Yeah.
Yep. And yeah, it's just kind of uninspiring, unfortunately.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. February next month we've got Got Madam Web coming out.
Ooh, you know, I might actually end up seeing that just because I'm kind of morbidly curious about it.
I think it's going to be another Morbius.
I refuse to believe it would be as bad as Morbius, and I'll tell you why. I refuse to believe that anybody could give less of a crap about a movie that they're supposedly method acting for than Jared Leto did in Morbius. With
you,
four
you,
actresses in the main cast, one of them is statistically going to be giving a crap.
yeah, yeah. Which one will be interesting to find out?
Yes. But that's a few weeks away, so I have time to make bad decisions between then and now.
Yes. Yeah.
Speaking of bad decisions, our review choices this week, because
Yes.
while we can't say that they were so bad that they gave us cancer, coincidence that my sinus infection turned into a nasty cold in the course of the week after watching these back to back on the same day? I think not.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So first up, we got the. Did it not? Did my? Oh, it didn't do it. Why didn't you do it? Okay. All right. Well, let me
The
just.
robots are rebelling.
Yes, the robots are rebelling. Okay. All right. Here we go. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So we watched the creator, which is on based on my suggestion because I've been curious about this movie. Um, I remember seeing we were talking about it during our box office talks and saw some of the advertising for it, and I thought, oh, okay, it's an original movie. It's not part of a franchise. It's like, okay, well, maybe this could be interesting. It wasn't.
Yeah, and I would say I would say it had some potential, but okay, Hollywood, listen carefully. Directors are not writers, and you need to force a second draft. It's what Rebel Moon did, it's what The Last Jedi did, and it's what the creator did.
Yeah.
I am forced to almost wonder if who's the director of this one again? I'm
uh, uh, Gareth Edwards, who
Gareth
did,
Edwards. Yes.
yeah, he directed Rogue One. Yeah.
Well, he directed Rogue One, and then wasn't he sacked, and then someone else came in to correct it.
Yes, yes, yeah. He directed about 2/3 of it, and then the last third, he got replaced by another director.
I am kind of forced, just like with Rebel Moon, to wonder if Kathleen Kennedy had a point to yank him from Rogue One, and I hate having to wonder if Kathleen Kennedy was making smart decisions.
Yeah, makes you wonder about Phil Lord and Chris Miller with Solo.
Oh, I can tell you that uh, having seen the Lego Movie and now Into the Spider Verse 2, which
Yeah.
is the second Miles Morales movie, that the tone of that one would have been so darned jokey
Oh
unless they
yeah.
were restraining themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to get into
I guess
this,
we need to actually talk about this movie at some
yeah,
point.
yeah. Let's see. Get into this movie. So the creator is takes place in 2160 or 2065, I should say, about 50 years or 40 years in the future, and it's basically a world where at one point uh, humans were using AI for basically everything, but then the a nuke goes off in LA, which was caused by an AI, and now AIs have been outlawed in the United States, but in the what was it called? The Asian Republic. They
New
still
Asia Republic,
New Asia Republic. It's still being AI is still being used, which
and
uh,
embraced.
yes, it's it's really funny that all of the nations in of Southeast Asia all came together
To love robots.
to low robots. Yeah.
Uh, And the cowards wouldn't say which actual country it was, because I think they just wanted to be able to cast anybody of any Asian extraction. Because one of the robots that are into later is Ken Watanabe, and he keeps speaking in Japanese, and there is a language that they describe in the subtitles as New Asian.
Yeah. Ninja asks, "Is there one giant mecha robot?" No, there is not, but there is
So
a floating orbital weapons platform.
yeah, yeah. Um, and what's kind of interesting about this one is I hadn't quite grasped this, but I think it's meant to be a diverging timeline from the 60s because we're introduced to the AI with like a almost Fallout-esque retro commercial about how the AI are here to help us out.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah.
And I did notice that that the guy who was the president celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the nuking of LA, I said, "Yeah, that guy has an awful lot of general's bars on his chest for a U.S. president." So I think we're supposed to assume that some things went awry.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking that too. I'm like, I mean, yeah. If we're so far down the line of presidential succession that we're into the military, we're in deep trouble.
Yeah, or the military has seized control. We don't really know much about the U.S. aside from the fact that L.A. is gone, or at least there's a big hole in the middle of L.A.
Yeah, and yeah, Ninja says that's unrealistic. One of those Asian countries would have built one. Yeah,
Yeah, the robots as presented in this one would not be especially great. Like we'll get into that in a minute, but I don't think they would be able to actually support their weight on a larger platform.
right. Yeah. So now, so you got the U.S. and the Free Asia Republic at war with each other, and we were introduced to Joshua, who is played by John David Washington, the son of Denzel Washington. You might have also seen him in Tenet. Uh,
I didn't, but other people might have.
I did, yeah, but yeah, um, but yeah. So he's undercover in this pro robot group, and he's got a wife that he's knocked up, and things go awry when the U.S. military shows up, and things go bad, and then Nomad, which is the floating orbital weapons platform that I mentioned, uh, just launches a cruise missile and takes them all out.
Right, and and also Joshua loses his arm in the process, and so you cut to 6 years later where he's taken an awful job, uh, basically decontaminating uh, the LA nuke zone.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
they do something where where I kind of went uh-oh early on, because up till then it's like, okay, this is a bit melodramatic and stuff, but it's not too bad. But they had a scene where he was it I forget, was it mechanic or his therapist, and they start playing Claire de Lune in the background. It's like, oh no,
yeah,
like
yeah.
that's as basic a choice as pumpkin spice lattes.
Yeah. And yeah, and Fat Boy asks, so Nomad instead of NORAD? Pretty much,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like North American Mobile Aerial Defense or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, and he says it sounds like Elysium. Well, I haven't seen Elysium, so
Yeah, I can't comment either.
can't comment on that.
But so a woman who is suspiciously like a female version of Quaritch from Avatar shows up
Yeah.
to try to recruit him. Hey, we need you to go back in there. We found your wife.
Hmm.
Now, I'm immediately taken off guard here because the last time he saw his wife, she had realized that he was a double agent, pointed a gun at him, and I forget if she actually ever pulled the trigger, but she was clearly very tempted to, at the very least.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh, But he acts like the chance to go find his wife again, as if all is forgiven, considering that he lied to her the entire time they knew each other.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And yeah, the So yeah, so they go into the spec ops team goes in, and it reminds me of Aliens, the way that they
Yeah,
do it.
and they have some cool tech ideas there. They're
Yeah,
just like they have this wheeled platform that basically carries a bunch of artillery and stuff like that.
yeah. Hey, D Rhino, TV is a cat boy. Not quite. He's just a very, very.
I'm a sick bobcat.
He's a sick bobcat. Yeah. Um, yeah, yeah, and they had the translation stuff that was pretty cool. It was interesting.
Yep,
Uh,
that was probably one of the stronger scenes in the movie.
yeah. And then all right. And then but then of course it all kind of goes to heck when Joshua goes into the vault, and then he sees a little robot girl, and
Right,
they're watching TV.
because they were there because we kind of cut this out because we're kind of focused on things not making sense. Um, his wife was reportedly the daughter of Nirmata, the person who had invented this AI technology in the first place, who the robots viewed as a god.
Yeah.
And he was sent in. The wife being alive was the lure. What they really wanted was that supposedly somebody was working on this AI super weapon that would be able to defeat Nomad. And
Hmm.
since Nomad literally cost $1 trillion, and it's their most successful weapon in the war against AI, which is we'll put a pin in that for later.
Yeah, yeah,
Why this is mildly stupid.
yeah.
Uh, um, and so they send him in because he has local expertise,
Mhm.
and they want him to grab this weapon. Well, the weapon turns out to be the little girl in the background there.
Yeah.
I should mention that a weird thing about the some robots in this world just have a disc shaped head.
Hmm. And yeah, and Ninja says, who wrote this part? The people who complain about Lois being mad at Clark for lying. Yeah, probably. And then they're at war with the AI. Okay, so
Now they kind of do like some Vietnam War on terror type stuff, where
yeah,
it's like this movie is very anti-U.S. This
yeah,
might
it is. Yeah,
this might be an alternate universe where the U.S. is much more militaristic and evil than they are in real life, but uh, basically they say, "Oh, we're not at war with East Asia. We're at war with the AI that they're harboring. So people need to just get with the program."
yeah. A little, definitely parallels with the war on terror on that one.
Yeah, but of course, there's always collateral damage, so it's just like unpleasant.
Yeah,
Um, so he grabs this little girl, and it turns in. And the movie is supposed to be built on the two of them bonding over the course of his escape and their attempt to get her back to America. And his attempt, like his main focus is finding his wife.
yeah, and yeah, and their interactions are very like very muted. Like
Yeah,
I never get the sense that he ever really cares about her at all.
right. She is a means to an end for him. Now
Yeah,
I forget the actress's name. This was her first movie. She's pretty charming, and you get the impression that she is becoming more human and bonding with him over the course of the movie.
yeah, yeah,
You do not get the same impression from Mr. Washington, unfortunately. And
yeah.
I've seen him in one thing. You've seen him in two things. Is he the problem, or is the script the problem?
Um, hard to say. Tenet was just a very confusing movie, and it was very hard to keep up with the plot. Um, I
Right, that was
I
the one
honestly
where run
think that
backwards, right?
what's that?
That was the one where it's run backwards, right?
Right, yeah, yeah, where it's time travel thing, yeah.
Right, right.
Um, I he did I think he's trying. I hate to kind of say this, but I think that there's a little bit of truth to it. I think he's trying to be like his dad.
Oh,
He's trying to act like his dad, and it's just not quite working.
Yeah,
Um,
he didn't really have a lot of charisma in this one.
no, and I hate comparing him to his father because it's not really not that fair. It's not fair to do that. But I mean, he doesn't have the same. He doesn't have the charisma that his father has. Yeah.
Right, and it's unfair to expect anybody to live up to their dad, but there we are.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like he should be. Hopefully, he can become the best version of him he can be, rather than being a imitation of his father.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will say that the script didn't really do him any good. Because the character I don't think was very well written.
No, and there's also like lots of little world building things that seem weird on the face of it.
Yeah.
Like I actually had to ask the question: do these artificial robots eat? Because there is a scene where they're hiding out with one of his expat buddies who has a robot girlfriend, and the robot girlfriend makes a reference to, "Oh, we're out of ice cream," and it almost seems like she's offering the little girl robot ice cream, or like she's getting ice cream to mollify the little girl robot,
Yeah.
which we don't see another sign that they eat over the course of the movie. So like, does she know that her boyfriend just always wants to have some like strawberry ice cream around or something?
I don't know.
Uh,
Yeah, the whole reason for the ice cream was to give them the bad guys a reason to blow up the apartment.
right. It's like, uh, and there's also, let's see what else is weird. Also, for the U.S. For being an evil superpower that has banned AI, one of their weapons they use are these robots on legs
Yeah,
that are autonomous bombs that basically, like, nobody tries to shoot these things, so we don't know if they're just like bulletproof or what. But they
yeah,
basically just run up around barriers and explode.
yeah, yeah.
When a good old fashioned mortar or missile would just be way more effective.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't make any. Yeah, it didn't make any sense at
Yeah.
all.
The weapon
Yeah,
doesn't make sense, and you have to start asking questions about, okay, why is the U.S. employing one of these? It would be like having a faction that said, "Oh well, we ban guns," and then you find that they have, I don't know, an armed turret or something.
yeah, 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 yeah. Just weird and yeah, I think yeah, I heard that Denzel's playing Hannibal, the Hannibal on the Alps.
Hmm.
It should be interesting. And is AI supposed to be a crappy race analogy? Wasn't getting that.
So there are some themes of people feeling like they're being replaced. Like they make a
Mhm.
reference to, why aren't there Neanderthals? They could do art and had language. Da, 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 da. We were
Yeah,
just meaner and we fought and effed them
yeah,
uh,
yeah,
into extinction. And that there's worries about that with the AI. Um, there's I would say though it's almost more like a metaphor for people being afraid of what they don't understand, kind of like an X-Men mutants type thing.
yeah, yeah,
The other thing is that this movie can be very sloppy at times. Like it's a big deal apparently that the U.S. has been lying the whole time. They knew that the AI didn't intentionally nuke Los Angeles. They just There's just a human error in a code that caused the missile to be launched.
yeah. Which that's like and you pointed it out when we were watching. It was like, well, what isn't that just that could be like AI propaganda that they spread around? Like,
Right. How does Ken Watanabe's character, who just seems to be a grunt soldier AI person, like how does he have access to this information?
yeah,
Like it would have made more sense for Joshua's old army buddy to know that.
yeah. But yeah, but he knew something else that was, you know, a twist in a plot twist, which was not a very good plot twist.
Right. Um, then you have questions about the AIs themselves. Like they're able to strangle the AI,
Mhm.
which which just raises further questions, to quote Futurama. Like,
Yeah,
so the AI have to breathe?
yeah, they have lungs. Yeah,
Did you just start? Like, do you just have manufacturing? Are you just manufacturing arguably worse people
yeah,
because they aim as well as humans or worse than humans? They fight as well as humans. They don't seem to have any sort of networking to let them communicate with each other. Because Joshua keeps he keeps befuddling whole groups of the AI with the silver disc heads.
yeah. Uh, yeah, it's strange. I don't. Yeah, they don't explain the physiology of these robots very well at all or at all.
Yeah, I also think that there's also a problem with Nomad itself as a weapons platform.
Yeah,
First off, it's never clear where Nomad actually is in relation to anything else. Because, but first off, in the opening scene, they're doing a stealth mission, and
mhm,
Nomad is just floating there. It looks like 1,000 feet in the air because it looks so big. And
yeah,
it's just shining blue lights down, scanning all over the damn place in the middle
yeah,
of a stealth mission.
yeah, yeah.
And all the blue lights are targeting sites for these cruise missiles.
Yeah,
And I'm thinking to myself, what's wrong with a submarine or a warship?
yeah,
Because they keep fighting by the ocean. You
yeah,
don't need this giant nomad device that's in
mm,
orbit. Of course, it's there to set up a set piece at the ending.
mhm, yeah,
But yeah, so sometimes nomad is high enough that it's in the atmosphere. Sometimes nomad is seems to be like it seems like you could almost load some fighters into it and go deal with it.
yeah.
Also, the East Asian Republic has no fighter planes whatsoever.
Right. Yeah, yeah. They have no air force, so yeah, so they can't just like get in planes and fly up and shoot it down.
Right. And I guess we've okay. So that's kind of our gripes about the mechanics of the movie is that like a lot of things weren't really thought through. Did you ever see the Disney movie Meet the Robinsons?
I didn't.
So they have a villain there who's basically a very tired little boy who grew up evil.
Yeah.
Um, and he often he's not the smartest villain. He's kind of being propped up by someone else. At one point, he summons a T Rex,
Yeah.
and because it's time travel, and the T Rex is trying to catch somebody. And like, well, go get them. T Rex like, well, I have this big head and these tiny little arms. I don't think you thought this through very well.
Yeah.
And that's kind of this movie in a nutshell. Like, there's a lot of things where what was cool, what would look cool, trumped what would actually make sense for the story they were trying to tell.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, yeah. They just like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did that? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's put that in there. Like, oh, well, wait, it's not working. Ah, don't worry about it. It'll be fine.
Don't worry, it'll be fine.
Ah, it'll be fine. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
let's hear. So the other one of the pieces of technology that's kind of interesting is that if they come across somebody who's dead, they can download their brain for a minute and temporarily bring them back in a robot body, but it's very short lived.
Yeah. Yeah. That was twisted.
Yeah, the U.S. is not the good guys in this one in any way. Because there's no sign that the AIs have this technology.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
It's yeah. Yeah. It's uh, I was getting serious Avatar vibes from this movie.
yeah, when you're ripping off James Cameron's Avatar, you're not in good company, unfortunately.
No, no. Yeah.
Um, Now, so in the end, it turns out that the guy's wife, we're just going to spoil this thing. So it
Yeah.
turns out the guy's wife has been in a coma since the attack, and I guess they lost the baby, but she had already started working on the little AI girl, and she was based on their embryo. So I guess
It's a yeah, their daughter in essence.
yeah, which implies that the robot is growing. So maybe the robot does eat. Then in what sense is it a robot?
Yeah, yeah.
That's where you kind of need to settle the mechanics of this. Because if you lived in a world where and we see AI factories, they just make them as adults. So a
Yeah.
robot child should be confusing to people.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing too is people can donate their faces to be put on these robots.
Right, which Joshua would know that. And so him seeing a grainy image of his wife, he would, I would think you'd be at least slightly suspicious of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and also his wife is Nirmata. This we only mention it in passing because it has so little impact.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. Yeah. Nirmata is basically, yeah. Well, you already explained. Yeah.
yep. And so they go into space. They have a fight with a robot tentacle thing. Joshua sacrifices himself, but they uploaded a copy of his wife. Like, oh yeah, they pulled the plug on his wife.
Yeah.
Apparently, the robots couldn't do that, but they were happy to let him do that for reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
And but yeah, they downloaded her memories and her katra to bring up Star Trek in preparation for the next one.
All right.
Uh,
Yes.
and and then they, he and the little girl go up. They destroy the satellite, and there's a schmaltzy thing where he had to tell her what heaven was, and she's like, he's like, "Oh, I'll see you in heaven," and it's supposed to tug at your heartstrings. But by this point, I was just so out of this movie.
Yeah. I was too. Yeah. 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 Gareth Edwards basically just copied his ending from Rogue One and put it in this movie.
And the weird thing is that the way pieces of Nomad are dropping onto the ground, those people should have been blown back by debris and seriously injured or killed. But they were just like all happy as it's collapsing.
Yeah. Yeah. That didn't make any sense.
And that's why you don't make Wunderwaffe. You don't make one big, super expensive platform. You make a bunch of small, sane-sized platforms. Because if they'd been firing those cruise missiles from like from jet fighters or submarines or warships, well, we took out one.
Yeah. Yeah. We still got a bunch of other ones to go. Yeah.
You know, but that's harder to do for a movie. And Star Wars kept making Death Stars as the big obvious target, so I can't in good conscience complain too much. But it's just like it's just another bit of illogic that the movie asks us to swallow. So when this first came out, I think that a lot of people in our circle or people like we watch for reviews were giving this the benefit of the doubt and just kind of enjoying it because it wasn't a franchise movie.
Yeah.
And then I feel like people kind of sobered up a little bit about it and said, "Wait a minute,
Yeah. Well, yeah. Wait a second. This movie sucks.
yeah, it's very pretty." Apparently, the way they
Yeah.
produced this was they bought some Sony digital camera, like hand digital cameras. So they're able to cut the budget a bunch because they could get some very dynamic shots just with a guy holding a camera instead of having to have cranes and dollies and things like that.
Oh, okay.
So that's part of how they're able to make this thing for 80 million. And for the budget, you compare that to some of the DC and Marvel movies we've reviewed this year. Like this is impressive.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's visually very striking movie. I will give it that.
Which I feel like we keep having to say. It's like,
It,
stop skimping on the writing stage.
yeah. Yeah, just because something looks pretty doesn't mean it's going to be a good movie. You have to have depth to it. Yeah.
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 So I would say overall, I would say it's totally all right. Like it's not great. I think we were both bored of it about the midway mark. If I wasn't watching this to review, I would have given up on it.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, I probably would have too. Yeah.
Sorry, my phone is blowing up slightly.
Oh, it's okay.
Nothing I have to deal with right now.
Yeah.
But so that was the first of our illness-inducing movies.
Yes, and Ninja says, I'm getting tired of games and films focusing on visuals over storytelling. It actually makes it look uglier most of the time. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I like those one. Maybe the writer is scared of AI script writers. Oh.
But the theme of the movie is that we should be happy to be replaced by AI. So that's the other
Yeah,
thing. You know what? I'm going to bring up something. East Asia is just a weird mishmash.
yeah,
Like they have a East a New Asia or New Asia, I think
New Asia, yeah, New Asia Republic, yeah.
they have a whole new Asian language, but characters are constantly breaking into Japanese or Thai, and everybody just understands each other. So it's just like it looks like Vietnam, but it's just vague. It's too.
I couldn't tell where they it was kinda hard to tell where they were. It was either like I say, it was either Vietnam, Thailand, maybe South Asia or South China or,
Yeah.
somewhere around in there, yeah.
And Ninja says something that I hear people say, like for movies like Wish. Nobody's so AI, generative AI writing only became publicly available really like last year. So any movie, like we might see a couple of movies that used it at some point in production in the next year or so.
Yeah,
But you know, although I know that the Writers Guild worked very hard to try to minimize that
yeah.
with the main reason for their strike. Um, but like I don't think any movies that we're going to be seeing for a bit could possibly have that done. It's sometimes it's just human incompetence.
Right, yeah. And that's I think that's the case with this movie is just
So
not good.
I will say this was better to look at than Rebel Moon to compare it to another movie that emphasized visuals over um, emphasized visuals over plot.
Yeah.
Definitely definitely a better watch than that. Um, just not great, unfortunately.
No, not great. But yeah, so I think we're ready to move on.
The floggings may cease now.
Yes, yeah. So now I got to do this all over again. Well, I think I will talk about my thing, which let me see. Let me think of a good transition here. Going from I can't think of it. You're better at transitions than I am.
Um, here, well, we're going from science fiction to a fairy tale.
There we go. Yes, there we go. Yeah. So I watched uh Fairy Tale Dragon Cry, which is one of the fairy tale movies. And I've been meaning to watch it for a while. It's it's what you would expect from a shonen anime movie where uh, it takes place with the characters and everything, but it's not really doesn't fit into the main continuity. Um, it's I can't. I was trying to figure out where in the continuity this movie took place in because there were I'll be honest, I stopped watching Fairy Tale probably right around season two.
Okay, I got way further into it. We know it's at least episode 100 or so because that little girl with the pigtails there, she was one of the later main characters who was introduced.
Right. Yeah. I remember her. Yeah. Yeah. I remember Wendy. And Carla, her cat, her flying cat. But in this, Carla can take human form. And then like Gray's powers go like he goes like full like he can make like black ice, like as you
Hmm.
can see in the poster, which yeah. So I don't know, like I think this is very very much later in the continuity of Fairy Tale, but yeah. So the movie basically about a this guy named Zash, who was from their kingdom of Fioria, and then he turns traitor and he goes to another kingdom called this was Stella or Stellar Kingdom. Uh,
It's been a while since I've seen Fairy Tale, so
yeah. Well, yeah, it's yeah. So much going on in Fairy Tale. There's a lot of stuff to keep hard. It's hard to keep track of a lot of things, but
yeah.
so then he goes to Fioria and he steals a staff called the Dragon Cry, and it has like the soul of a dragon in it. And so our intrepid fairy tale team, fairy tale party, which is of course the main one, is it's Natsu, Urza, Gray, Lucy, and Wendy, along with Happy and Carla, have to go and get the dragon cry back. And then they find out that uh, the kingdom needs this staff because they have these crystals everywhere that absorb a lot of sunlight, and the more sunlight that the crystals absorb, the more vibrant they become, and then the more energy they absorb. But they've said that these crystals are absorbing so much energy that they're about to explode.
Mm.
And yeah, and so they need the dragon cry to keep that from happening. But but Natsu, of course, being the dragon slayer that he is, he doesn't want to hurt he doesn't want to hurt the dragon. He doesn't want to do anything like that. So they try to come up with another way. But then there's a twist in there where uh, the king of this stellar kingdom uh, is actually a dragon, and he's inhabited the body of this girl, Sophie or Sophia, I can't remember, something like that. And so she basically has like split personalities. Um, and so yeah, so then chaos ensues, and you got a whole bunch of battles, and as per usual with fairy tale, you've got a lot of these one-on-one battles between members of the fairy tale and then other bad guys from this kingdom, and different
Hmm.
you know fights and everything. And
Good wizards and evil wizards.
good wizard, yeah, good wizards, evil wizards, and then you got what was interesting was Lucy. I guess her powers have changed a bit, where not only does she can she summon her celestial spirit, but she can also like use their powers, and like her clothes change to match
Oh,
the
so she isn't
spirit.
entirely useless anymore.
No, no, she isn't. Yeah, she can actually do something now.
Progress.
Yes, yes, progress. It's it's a fun little story. I didn't like it as much as the Black Clover movie. Um, but it's a good little movie if you like fairy tale. And yeah.
Would you say it's newbie friendly?
uh no, I wouldn't say that it's newbie friendly.
Okay,
You definitely have to watch a good chunk of fairy tale to know what's going on, and who all the characters are, and their relationship with everybody, and relationships, and yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt that was probably the biggest strength of that Black Clover movie is like you were able to track what was going on more or less, even though you'd never seen it up to that point.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, once I was introduced to the characters, yeah, I could figure out like, okay, then okay, Asta is this kind of character, and then Yuno's that kind of character, and then you got these other people. Yeah, it was easy to figure out, but this one, it was like, okay, if you're a newbie watching it, you're like, okay, what's Natsu's deal? Why can he eat fire? Like, what's his,
Right.
yeah, like what's the deal with Urza? Why can she like keep changing her outfits, and why does Gray always take his clothes off? That.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, you would get a little lost, yeah, if you had never seen fairy tale before.
You wonder if that's based on like the respective popularity of their series because
Mhm.
yeah, it's like Fairy Tale back in its heyday was a pretty darn big series. I think it was. I think it's actually in might be one of the top 10 best-selling manga of all time in Japan,
Yeah,
if
that
I
that doesn't
recall.
surprise me. Yeah,
So maybe they just didn't. It's like a One Piece. It's like that One Piece Red movie I reviewed a few months back or a few weeks back.
yeah,
Uh, like nobody. Like, okay, of course you're watching One Piece and you know who all these characters are. Shut up.
yeah,
I didn't entirely, but that's my bad, I guess.
yeah. But
And
yeah.
I think that we're actually kind of in similar shape for both of our reviews this week, amusingly,
Oh, really? Okay.
as
But
far as newbie friendliness. But
yeah.
any final thoughts?
Well, I would just say, if you like fairy tale, it definitely has all of the things you like in fairy tale. It's got some good action fight scenes. There's plenty of fan service uh, between Lucy and Urza. Um,
Not Wendy, you sick bastards.
yeah, no, no, definitely not Windy. And even a little what, and I would say even a little bit of Juvia too, because Juvia shows up in there.
Uh,
Um,
oh yeah, she's the one who's obsessed with Gray, right?
right, yeah, and
I
she's
always
still,
liked her best.
yeah, yeah, and she's still obsessed with Gray. Um,
Good.
and there's a funny little scene in there between the two of them. But yeah, I mean, if you like fairy tale, if you haven't seen it yet, give it a watch. It's on Crunchyroll. So yeah, all right. So that's my review. Um, but still on the anime track here with hopefully I get the right one here. Yeah, there it is. Boom.
Dragon Ball Super Superhero. One of the more redundant names of all time because it's based on the Dragon Ball Super anime.
Ah, yeah.
So I've been curious about this one since last year. For one thing, it was the top movie in the U.S. for a week in August in 2022. So good on it.
Yeah, I remember
And
that. Yeah.
and I had purchased the Blu-ray a while back when when I think I either had credit or was on sale. I forget which. Um, and I decided to, I said, you know what? I'm sitting at home. I'm not doing anything else. I'll turn this on. Um, and boy, if your thing isn't newbie friendly, this one is especially not newbie friendly
Uh,
because
yeah.
now I'll say they do make a point of making some nice big information dumps. So if you happen to wander into the movie theater and you don't know what a Dragon Ball is, you can maybe kind of figure out some of what's going on.
Oh, okay.
So the plot of this one is actually, excuse me, thankfully I muted that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ninja says you really enjoyed this.
I can see why.
Yeah.
Um, but so there is a line from The Simpsons where they have Rainier Wolfcastle on Hollywood Squares, and uh, he mentioned his new movie coming out. Help, my new movie. Help, my son is a nerd. I my son comes home from college and I discover that he's turned into an enormous nerd.
Yeah.
I'm laughing already. It's not a comedy. Oh,
Yeah.
that's almost this movie in relation to the character Gohan.
Uh,
So, um, there's le- although there's a little less Gohan than I would have liked. So Daniel, I know you aren't a Dragon Ball person, so
mm,
and just for anyone in the audience who also isn't a Dragon Ball person, um, the thing with like this attempt to rehabilitate Gohan and Piccolo, because they've both fallen way behind the power scale of Dragon Ball Super.
mm.
Um, Piccolo because he isn't a Saiyan, and the plot is unfairly biased towards Saiyans and always has been ever since you had more than one Super Saiyan. Uh, Gohan because, well, help, my son is a nerd,
Yeah.
where he keeps being the peak character at different points, being Goku's son, and he keeps um, he keeps regressing when he gets busy with his day job, having a wife and kid.
Yeah.
Like he just keeps settling for mediocrity. So Goku, yeah, Gohan has always been established as he, in theory, has more fighting potential than his dad does. It's just that Goku is a fighting savant when he is
Yeah.
useless at everything else.
Yeah.
Where Gohan is actually like a functional member of society, more or less.
Yeah.
So this movie was designed to kind of again address that. Um, so the backstory they dump on you is that back in the day, when Goku was a kid, he fought this group of enemies called the Red Ribbon Army, uh, who were trying to get the Dragon Balls, and they weren't shy about who they killed to try to make it happen.
Mm.
So Goku ended up fighting a series of robots and what they call androids, but it really means cyborgs. That's one of those '90s dub choices that the series has had to live with ever since in the West.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of callbacks to OB. This is a very continuity packed movie, surprisingly. Uh,
Wow.
which is rare for Dragon Ball because like Toriyama has been heavily involved with these movies. He actually
Yeah.
started the first one of these Dragon Ball Super movies because he was so annoyed at being shut out of creative input on the Dragon Ball live action Western movie that it kind of made him remember how much he liked working on the series,
Yeah.
and he wanted to be super involved from there on.
Ah,
Uh, but he'll forget that characters exist
yeah.
when he was writing the manga at the time. So seeing so much continuity porn in this one was kind of interesting.
Mm,
But see, in this army called the Red Ribbon Army, they establish, and they had an evil scientist named Doctor Gero who made all these robots and androids, and he eventually came back in Dragon Ball Z and made he created some characters who were major villains, some of whom became allies over time.
uh, uh,
Uh, well, you established that the son of the Red Ribbon Army's leader and the grandson of Dr. Gero basically team up,
uh,
and there's a very long sequence. And one thing I was very hesitant about when I was seeing stills in the trailer for this movie is that by and large this movie is done in 3D.
mm,
There are some 2D sequences, mostly in the flashbacks and for bits where you just have a bit character who it wouldn't make sense to make a model for.
uh,
But but sorry, I got distracted by Ninja's comment about yes, he did make the objective best girl of Dragon Ball Z as well, Android 18. I will hear no argument.
yeah. Yeah.
But
I don't know
but
Dragon Ball, and even I know who Android 18 is.
see, Eh, it's that or not leather, it's that denim jacket.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
um, she. So the two team up because the villain actually does something very clever. He this grandson mad scientist kid is a very interesting character because he is at once ruthless but also inspired by heroes.
Uh,
Like he's happy to kill people towards his objectives, but at the end of the day, what he really wants is he wants to make super robots better than his grandfathers that could be the world's greatest heroes.
yeah. Okay.
And so, what the general of the Red Ribbon Army in exile, I guess, like they basically made a pharmaceutical company under the same name, which is an awful disguise.
Yeah.
It'd be like having Third Reich. Yeah, oh yeah, Third Reich Motors. Like no, we're not a front uh, for a Fourth Reich. What are you talking about? Shut up.
Yeah. 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 This exhibit is closed.
Yes, but he manipulates him because he uses what would be like what very little public information would be available about the Super Saiyans and everybody to paint
Yeah.
a picture where Bulma, like one of the supporting characters, and her mega corporation are secretly colluding with evil aliens to slowly invade the Earth. Like he manages to paint footage he has of the heroes fighting off aliens as see these aliens were clearly just fighting over who would get to pick up the scraps when they actually launched the invasion. So it's very clever that way. He manages to manipulate this guy and convinces him, hey, we need to make these super robots to fight off these evil aliens.
Uh,
Um, I mentioned that the crux of this movie was help, my son is a nerd, but that it isn't actually Gohan's story really. It's really Piccolo who is the green alien guy in the middle there.
okay.
Also with a unusually precocious 3-year-old Pan, who is the little girl at his ankle.
Okay.
Uh, who he is training a little bit in using her ki. She's super strong, and but she can't fly yet, so that's a whole thing. Um, that's right. I was trying to talk about the animation. I'll cover that later. Uh,
Yeah.
Sorry, I saw Ninja mentioning waifus and got thrown off.
Oh,
Um, but Piccolo is very annoyed at Gohan for the reason that many fans are annoyed at Gohan. Because at the end of the day, while Gohan is a good scientist, this is not a series about science, really. It is a series about punching people in the face. So, and I know when I was watching the Tournament of Power arc in Dragon Ball Super, I was constantly frustrated at Gohan. Like, you are in theory, the strongest person here. How do you keep screwing up so bad? And the answer is he just let himself go.
Yeah.
So Piccolo is worried about that. He actually berates Gohan a bit, but Gohan kind of brushes him off. Uh,
Mm,
Gohan and his wife keep making Piccolo babysit and pick up Videl or pick up their daughter Pan uh, from daycare, and so like he's just he's like a lovable grumpy uncle, which is peak Piccolo writing.
yeah.
Um, and then Piccolo is attacked by one of those caped alien-looking guys there. Uh, to be One of the interesting things here is that because the mad scientist wanted to make the world's greatest hero, he programmed two superheroes basically for his artificial humans.
Uh,
And so, but they're convinced that Piccolo, who used to be a villain, is still a villain. Piccolo, okay, Demon King Piccolo, what? I haven't been that guy for a while. What do you mean you haven't been that guy for a while? It's complicated, or something like that. And so Piccolo actually, like, this is the most Piccolo has gotten to do, arguably, in the entire history of Dragon Ball. Like he infiltrates the enemy base. He figures out their plans. He figures out wishes for the dragon to grant that let him unlock more power, so he can actually function at a higher level. He he is carrying this plot.
yeah. Wow.
Gohan is almost more of a plot device where they use his power at the end. Um, so the non spoiler thoughts on this is that if you're a DBZ fan, just watch this. Like you're probably going to enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. While Piccolo had infiltrated the enemies, he made the plan to kidnap a willing Pan so that Gohan would get angry, because that was always Gohan's thing, was that he had to get angry to be really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So like, Piccolo is being a master manipulator. He gets to have all the cool fight scenes. Gohan is really just like the blunt instrument at the end who gets a new power level when he finally he gets upset watching Piccolo get taken apart by the last villain.
No. Okay.
Um, Fat Boy mentions Dragon Ball Z Abridged. A funny thing about that, there are actually a couple of lines that almost feel like they would have been lines in Dragon Ball Abridged. One of them was Bulma shows up with reinforcements and says, "Hey, I brought some of the strongest heroes in the world. Also, Krillin is here too." Like I almost was like, okay, where's the Krillin owned ding that they would always do in Dragon Ball Abridged?
Oof.
Yeah. And the animation was actually something that uh, I was kind of concerned about going into this movie, because they like I said, like I was saying before, I got derailed by waifu talk before. Um, they largely have switched over to a 3D style for this, but I feel like the animators took this switch to 3D as a challenge. Basically, can we like what all can we make look natural with 3D? So they're constantly doing things like characters have flexible parts. Like you have a character with long ears who that they flop around very like just like they were drawn. You have scenes of characters eating Oreos, and one of them it takes the Oreo apart and like runs the cookie through the cream of the other half, and it looks good. Uh,
Yeah.
they, they and they do all the things you can do with 3D that are hard to do with 2D, like have the camera pan around at crazy angles.
Mm,
So and they just make effects happen that you could not make happen with 2D. So yeah, I have this now. There are some models that look better than others. Uh,
yeah.
I'm sure they put the most effort into the Piccolo and Gohan models since they were getting the most use here. Some of the others look little bit bad, and they kind of look bad from profiles.
No. Okay.
Um, but I was worried it was going to be like video game cutscene level from some of the stills I was seeing. Nah,
Uh,
nah, it's
okay.
good.
Okay. Well,
Um, Now, if you didn't watch Dragon Ball, you are going to be so confused, because as much as they try to bring you up to speed, they're just things you're going to have to run with.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, Now, as far as now, I do have a couple of criticisms. One is they have a scene like, of course, I guess you can't not have Goku and Vegeta around, even if they aren't the main characters in this, because they have kind of a long scene with them training as the explanation for why they aren't around to save the day.
Okay.
And I kind of could have done without that scene. It was a kind of a continuation of the previous Broly movie, but it was like very, very slice of life.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like you could cut that out of the movie without consequence.
Okay. Hmm.
Um, and then I would have preferred that. While it was great having Piccolo as the focal point, I kind of wish that it had been more about Gohan, since his character like his character development was the point of the movie, was to make him realize, yes, there are going to be continuous threats that are going to attack us. You need to be ready for them. Your dad won't always be there to bail us out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's just kind of a passenger.
Uh, mm,
Now,
uh,
the other funny thing is that,
yeah.
so there, I almost feel like they did this on purpose as a joke
Yeah.
for almost a decade now. So Latin American Dragon Ball fandom is just full of the most fake news you ever saw.
Yeah.
Like constant rumors, constant fake power scales, just constant nonsense that they're spewing.
All right.
And one of the things that they were always doing was, oh, this season of Dragon Ball Super, the most powerful character is going to be Gohan Blanco. And they would just have this picture of Gohan with white spiky hair. Well, when Gohan achieves a new power level in this movie, guess what color his hair turns?
Uh,
So it's like, okay, did you guys do that on purpose, or did one of those guys actually stumble on something accurate?
yeah. Oh boy.
But yeah, so I'm more, but yeah, those are some criticisms. There's some fluff there, but like Dragon Ball Z is kind of about the fluff, or at least Dragon Ball Super is about the fluff. It's much less action oriented and high stakes than Dragon Ball Z was.
Yeah. Okay.
But man, I feel like we're gonna need to go beyond to make it through this next review.
Yes, we are. We are going to have to go beyond. Beyond.
Beyond plot and characterization.
Watch. Yes. Yeah. So. Yeah. So we watched for our old movie review. Uh, Star Trek Beyond, which is the third and for now final Star Trek movie in the J.J. Abrams Kelvin timeline uh, era. Um,
Even
it,
though Paramount has made it an annual tradition to announce a fourth movie every single year to try to fool investors who aren't paying attention.
right, yeah, and thanks, Fat Boy, we appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, condolences is a good word for it. Because after watching the creator turning right to this, like, oh god.
Yeah. I don't know, for some reason I remember this movie being better than it was. Um,
Did you see that in theaters or?
I did see it in the theater. Yeah, that might be why. Um,
You
but
also probably, I mean, it is different watching something for the purposes of reviewing it rather than just watching it for raw enjoyment.
that's true. Yeah. But yeah. So Star Trek Beyond takes place. It's not quite 3 years after the events of Into Darkness. The Enterprise is 3 year, almost 3 years into its 5 year mission. And it starts off with Kirk is trying to negotiate a peace treaty with these little aliens, and part of the treaty is that he's giving away this piece of like thing from an ancient weapon, and the little aliens don't take too kindly to it, and they attack Kirk, and in a comical scene. Um,
I thought that was one of the more clever things in the movie, like, because you were just dealing with a very different alien psychology. It's
yeah.
like, I'm here to give you a gift. Why? Why don't you want it anymore? What's wrong with it? Like the idea of a gift giving was foreign to them.
Yeah. Yeah, and then so he's like, you don't know these guys like we do. They're gonna do all this, and they're gonna eat us. Like, what?
Right, and then it makes much more sense when you see them and, "Oh, you're tiny."
Yeah, and yeah, so they all attack him, and then he beams aboard the ship, and of course has the great little Star Trek fan service or scene where Kirk says, "Ah, I ripped my shirt again," which if you watch the original series, if you original series, every now and then Kirk will get into a fight and his shirt will get ripped.
Yeah.
And so then we kind of go a little forward where Spock puts the little device in the vault, which sends a little signal to somebody that we don't know, and we get a little insight into the fact that Kirk is starting to get a little burned out with being a captain. Um, as evidence from his captain's log, and then he has a little pre-dinner drink or pre-birthday drink with Bones, uh, and the scene is obviously meant to be a reminiscent or a homage to the scene in Wrath of Khan, where it's kind of the same thing, where Kirk has his birthday, but he's feeling really melancholy, and he doesn't know what he's supposed to do with his life,
Which
and
is weird because Kirk in this continuity would be in his, like, 30s.
yeah. And yeah, and in Wrath of Khan, when Kirk was going through all that, he was 50. It's like, yeah, a little early for this Kirk to be having a midlife crisis.
Right, he's having a mid-mission crisis.
Yeah, yeah, and so then they arrive at although the other thing that bothered me about that scene was that Bones stole a bottle of scotch from Chekhov. Like,
Yeah, and they made a joke like, "Oh, I thought he'd be more
and yeah,
into
we're into
vodka." Like, racist.
yeah. Yeah, so did they forget Kirk wasn't 60? Yeah, I guess so. um, yeah, so then they arrive at Starbase Yorktown, which is, as Bones rightfully points out, looks like a giant snow globe in space.
Yeah, it kinda reminded me a bit of the one from Mass Effect.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, the Citadel. Yeah.
Thank you, I couldn't think of the name.
Yeah, and so then when they're there, a ship arrives with an alien woman who tells this sob story about her ship crashing on a planet that's in a nebula that they've never charted. And so Kirk and the Enterprise fly off into the nebula to try to rescue this alien's crew, and then the proverbial excrement hits the fan, or in this case, a bunch of tiny little ships hit the Enterprise.
Yeah, and, there's also I forget, did you mention the plot line with Spock? Kind
Oh
of
no, I didn't. I didn't mention it. No.
the kind of the tribute to Leonard Nimoy?
Right. Yeah. 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 So Spock's going through a bit of a crisis himself. If you saw the first movie in this trilogy, you'll know what happened. If you didn't, Vulcan is destroyed, and there are only like a handful of Vulcans left, and so he kind of feels like he has to be uh, trying to propagate the species more, and so as such he ends his relationship with Uhura, which was always weird to me to begin
Ye
with.
yeah, it was always a weird choice in Star Trek, because like, the trinity of Star Trek was always, it was always Bones, Kirk, and Spock,
Yeah,
but Bones got shoved to the side in favor of Uhura.
yeah, which I didn't like at all, and neither did Carl Urban, who plays Bones in these movies.
Understandable. I mean, poor
Yeah,
guy keeps getting shafted. He does a great comic accurate version of Dread. No one goes to see it.
yeah, yeah. Although everybody seems to like the boys, so he's got that going for him.
Yep.
But yeah, that's the other part of it too. Was he finds out that Leonard Nimoy's Spock, the Spock from the other timeline, passed away, And this movie came out a couple years after Leonard Nimoy passed away in real life, so they were doing the tribute to him. Um, and of course, speaking of other actors who passed away before the movie came out, Anton Yelchin, who played Chekhov in this movie, also
Yeah, tragic accident.
tragic accident. But yeah, so Spock is basically trying to figure out what he wants to do, and Kirk and before they leave on the mission, Kirk talks with the Commodore on the starbase, and we learn that he wants to take the admiral position at the starbase, and he wants to
which is
recommend Rod's to recommend Spock for captain.
which is also weird for a 30-year-old.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Admiral. Yeah, most people don't make admirals until they're in their 50s. It's just
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah.
So they
they,
go back, shit hits the fan, huge swarm of drones.
right, it's huge storm of drones. Uh, they're not sure, like what's going on, and then we meet the villain of the movie, whose name is Crawl. He's played by Idris Elba, and
Who I did not recognize under all the crap they kept putting on him.
no, I didn't either. Yeah, uh, yeah. Little slight spoiler: you actually do see him, as he normally looks near the end of the movie. But so he comes aboard the ship because he wants the piece of the uh, alien weapon that they have on the ship. Um, so he
Yeah,
just yeah.
isn't that so weirdly convenient that this guy needs the other half of his weapon, and they just happened to have gotten it, and they almost gave it away to another species who, if they hadn't rejected the gift, boy, that would have been awkward.
Yeah. Yeah, where would he have been been then? Oof. uh, he says, yeah, like Kroll, like the cheesy '80s movie. Yeah, I think it's spelled the same way. Yeah.
I
Um,
think it might have an A in it. Let's see here, Star Trek Beyond villain.
oh no, yeah, Kroll, yeah, Krall. I think that's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what Crawl really is he is a knockoff he's a knockoff of what do you call it? A con.
Con. Yeah. And
Yeah.
and that's the thing. Like the villains in all of these in these Kelvin timeline movies, they're all just knockoffs of Khan. Even the Khan is a knockoff of Khan.
Yeah, which is an accomplishment. Um,
Yeah.
so at this point the movie hits the accelerator. Um, so- and I kept saying while we were watching it that the movie was exhausting to watch because it just does not let up for long periods of time.
No, it is very fast paced. It there's no lull in there to like catch your breath for at least until probably not until like the five guys are on the old ship.
Yeah, there was like a scene with Spock and McCoy that I thought was kind of nice because they actually were talking about their characters a bit and what they were going to do with themselves. So
Yeah.
that was a moment that stuck out. But a lot of it was just a blur of action, 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 action. Oh, they captured the Enterprise. Uh, our heroes, our main cast has been split up. And main
Mhm.
character, and the main characters are like Kirk, Scotty, Spock, Chekhov. Was it Uhura,
Sulu.
Sulu? Although Sulu didn't really get to do much besides have a husband and a daughter in this one.
Yeah, which George Takei objected to. Even though, like George Takei, yes, he is a gay man, but he did not play Sulu as a gay man.
Right. So yeah, he did. I thought that was the most interesting thing about Sulu in this movie. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
is that out of movie thing.
right.
Now they also had a new character who is a all white alien, like actually like looks like Elric of Melbourne, played by Sophia Boutella of Rebel Moon infamy.
Yes, yeah. And it's yeah, and like Idris Elba, it's hard to recognize her underneath all that makeup.
Yeah, so I'll say that they at least were kind of creative with the alien character design for this one.
Yeah, they did. And the part where when Scotty is about to be attacked by a couple of aliens, and then Jayla comes and saves him, they looked a lot like orcs or goblins.
Yeah. And by the way, isn't it a funny coincidence that Simon Pegg was one of the two writers on this movie? And he happened to have some romantic tension with Sophia Boutella.
Yeah,
Really,
yeah,
it's weird how that happened.
yeah, yeah. Funny how that works. Yeah,
'Ca- because basically her character had crashed on the planet many years ago and had been slowly rebuilding um, a old or an old what do you call it,
it was
Starfleet ship.
yeah, it was an NX class starship. If you watched Star Trek Enterprise, that's that class of ship.
I thought it looked familiar. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's the yeah the I guess a later model of it because that ship was like the NX 300 something, um, and and the yeah the whole thing too with yeah they mentioned like the Makos which was a military assault command, and they're kind of like a special forces group. They show up in season 3 of Enterprise,
Hmm.
and yeah, they mentioned the Zindi War, which was that was the 3rd season.
Okay, I thought that sounded kind of familiar.
Yeah,
Uh,
but yeah, so she's kind of slowly building the ship back up, and yeah, Ninja, yeah, Simon Pegg wrote a self gratifying speech.
Yep. And
Yeah,
she even kind of has almost like Starfire qualities, and that she's kind of a fish out of water and doesn't quite understand some of what's going on.
yeah, um, and yeah, and then and how human names work. You know, because because Scotty says, "I'm Montgomery Scott," and call me Scotty, and she's like, "All right, Montgomery Scotty."
Yeah. Uh,
And Fat Boy says, he said, do a Klingon movie, no Federation, just Klingons wrecking stuff.
Oh, that would require creativity.
Yes, but what I say to that is Kapla. Uh,
Yeah. So I think so. Like we were saying, this is a very exhaustingly paced movie,
yeah,
and you know what actually reminded me of, and this is going to be a really insulting comparison,
yeah.
was Rise of Skywalker,
Mm.
because it is kind of
Ho-
like a series of video game fetch quests.
It is, yeah, very much so. And when you were talking about the pace of it and hitting the accelerator, it sort of reminded me of it reminded me of the fact that Justin Lin, who's the director of the movie, directed several Fast and Furious movies. So
Okay.
that might explain a lot of the pacing with the issues with this movie.
Right, because like I think you could do a Star Wars movie at this type of breakneck speed. Star Trek used to be more of a cerebral show.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And, I did my when I did a review of I'll put it in the corner up here, and hopefully this time I'll remember to do it. My review of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which was a cerebral movie, probably the only cerebral movie that started in the franchise. Because they did Wrath of Khan, which had a villain in it, and that was really popular. So from then on out, every Star Trek movie had to have a villain in it.
Yep,
Yeah.
for good or for ill.
Yes.
Well, I guess four had more like four
For
was probably the most like the first one, really.
yeah, it was, yeah, and yeah, yeah, that movie was more of a yeah, that movie was more cerebral, and it was also more of a comedy. But
Uh, Right. Um, and so we're gonna spoil the hell out of this movie. So if you
oh
don't want
yes,
to see
yeah.
that, we our general conclusion is we do not recommend.
No, unfortunately, I don't recommend it. Yeah,
And
it's
now I could see why you would enjoy it more in the theater,
mhm.
because if you don't have any distractions and you aren't thinking about it in like a reviewer sense, I could see being entertained by the moment to moment action, and like every character gets to do something. It's just
Yeah. I would say that is a positive of this movie is that every character in the movie, every member of the crew gets their moment. I mean, maybe aside from Sulu, but most of them have something to do in it. You know.
right. And Sulu at least gets to pilot the ship some in some.
Yeah.
Man, they destroy so many digital rocks in this movie.
Yeah.
Good thing space metal is stronger than rock mountains.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a little. Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So spoilers if you don't care about it.
Yeah.
Three, two, one.
Yeah.
So Crawl is again they just happened to have the other half of his doomsday weapon, which is more like a biological agent.
Yes.
And he kills the alien who did the Judas goat thing and led them there on the promise that they would save her crew quite
Right.
messily with that weapon.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very odd. Yeah. Didn't like that. But yeah, and then uh so his whole plan was to destroy Yorktown. And
And his reason for it is that's where he's the con ripoff because Starfleet left him buried alive, buried
yes.
alive.
Yeah, so yeah, so yeah, Crawl is his real name is Balthazar Edison, and he was the captain of the Franklin, the old ship that they're all on. And used to be in the military, and then when the Federation was formed, and Starfleet basically absorbed that military. And is Starfleet's not military. Its mission is exploration and scientific research.
Right,
Uh, yeah.
just with the occasional space fight mixed in.
Right. To reward Edison, they for all of his efforts, they gave him command of the Franklin, but he was not pleased with that because he's a soldier, he's not an explorer, uh, and uh, and something happened. I can't remember what it was. I think like the ship got caught in like a wormhole or something, and that ended up crashing on this planet. And then his crew all dies except for him, and he finds some life preserving technology on there which keeps him alive for 100 years.
And mutates him into a weird looking monster.
Yes.
Uh,
um
I should
yeah,
say that his whole crew doesn't die because like he has a bunch of minions who like weren't his crewmen also turned into the weird aliens?
maybe
'Ca-
maybe a couple of them.
Yeah, like he has like dozens of minions, and
Yeah.
or at least he has he has a large number of minions, and
Yeah, and
uh,
it's never really established if like they were like members of his crew, or if they were like other aliens that crashed on the planet and then they started working for him.
yeah,
It's
I remember
yeah.
in the logs they found of him, they said that only 3 members had survived.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
It's weird and not. If it was explained, I was checked out and bored by that point.
Yeah. Are they yellow and tried to steal the moon? No. No, they're not the minions, unfortunately. That would actually be a fun movie.
Yes, roughly about the same level of intelligence, though.
Yeah.
Um, so the the, the crew, so basically, he manages to. Well, he didn't have the Enterprise. What ship? No, he was flying one of the drone ships. That's right.
Yeah.
So he basically is able to, because he has the other half of this weapon. He is now ready to launch his invasion um, uh, of that place of that space station. So
Yeah.
he and his drone army that they call the bees
Yeah.
fly out there, and our crew has to try to stop them with these piddly little antique weapons when they earlier couldn't actually deal with them
Right. Yeah.
with
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
modern weapons.
Right. Yeah. And you pointed out too in the and when you were watching it, it's like Spock in the at the beginning of the movie says, "Captain, we're not equipped for this manner of engagement," and your response was, "Why not, you stupid bastard?"
Okay. Why not?
What? Yeah. Cha- yeah. Channeling uh, uh, yeah, whatever American Psycho. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, and but also it's like, well, Mr. Spock, you see, the enemy is currently coming at us in a huge wave, so it doesn't really matter if we're prepared for this or not. We kind of have to make do with what we have.
Yeah.
Well, and also, isn't it a coincidence that the advanced aliens who abandoned a planet that still had a bunch of mining material left on it left behind a bunch of intact working drone ships that happens to be more like these were presumably mining drone ships that were more advanced than what the Federation had, were able to soak up photon torpedoes and phaser fire like it was going out of style.
Yeah. That's hell of a coincidence. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the heroes go, and you have a bit where Spock and McCoy are on a captured drone for reasons I didn't quite understand.
They needed to figure out the frequency that
Oh, right.
the ships were all communicating with each other, and so they had to get on one of the ships. But Spock, you remember, Spock was hurt, so
Yeah,
Bones had to go with him, even though Bones was not happy about it.
right. But Bones in this version is kind of a scared hypochondriac.
Yeah, and he's never liked the
Right. He's afraid of space
transporters.
travel. That's right.
Yeah, he's very space rally. He doesn't like transporters, which in this series they didn't get to until this movie when he's like, "Oh, yeah, go, have my damn atoms scattered all over space."
Right. Right. Like they brought it up a little bit in the 2009 first movie, but not a whole lot since.
Right? Yeah, yeah. Um, but
And the way they defeat, okay, so the visuals in this movie are very pretty.
mhm.
That's its strength, in my opinion. So you have this scene where like the drones have formed into like a surf wave and are descending on the ship on the space station,
Yeah,
and the heroes figure out that they're communicating on was it UHF, no VHF,
UHF. Yeah,
yeah, radio frequencies, which seems
yeah,
like an odd flex for aliens, but that's neither here nor there.
yeah,
And so one of the waifu aliens quirks was that she had a bunch of old Earth music that she'd been listening to in her isolation, and Spock, of course, Scotty, of course, can't figure it out, so she has to go in and plug it in, and they blast Beastie Boys. Uh,
uh,
Can't stand it.
yeah,
Get
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the money. Sabotage. That's it.
Sabotage. Yeah,
They're busting sabotage, and it looks like the Enterprise is surfing up through space. It's surfing up this cresting wave of alien drones.
yeah,
And the thing is, like, as soon as I guess it makes enough, like a little bit of sense,
hmm
that if you have the ships flying that close to each other, disrupting their communications and coordination at all would just make them start crashing into each other. But the way they were portraying it, it was almost like the radio waves were just flat out making them explode.
yeah, yeah, and of course the use of sabotage was a callback to the 2009 movie.
That's right. The scene with the motorcycle,
No, no, it was when Kirk, when he's a kid,
right?
he
He steals the car. That's right.
steals a car and takes it for a joyride, and yeah, he's playing the
Yeah.
song on the radio. Yeah,
And but the crawl gets through, and then they proceed to have a running fight in the space station, trying to stop him from delivering the super weapon to the wrong place.
right. Yeah, and then Kirk and Crawl have a fist fight in the life support thing because he's trying to unleash the weapon up there, and then the two of them have kind of like this philosophical debate about
Which comes the frig out of nowhere.
yeah. Well, because it's Star Trek, they have to have some kind of philosophical, cerebral moment,
Right?
and you know,
Even if the rest of the movie has brain has brainworms or something, it's
yeah, it's just like
right. It's like it's because in the previous scene they found out that he was a soldier,
mhm,
and It's like, oh, humanity is a warlike species. We just need to embrace that. And
Yeah.
Starfleet isn't was a mistake. And Kirk's like, no, Starfleet's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah,
We can solve our problems peacefully as he's proceeding to beat the crap out of Idris Elba.
yeah. Yeah, and but they uh Kirk eventually saves the day. Or they all save the day, I guess. And then Idris Elba gets blown out into space and gets consumed by the bioweapon, and I guess they just kind
Truly
of
and
live. I guess they,
truly an ironic ending.
yeah. Um, and then Kirk decides to stay as the captain of the Enterprise, and I guess Spock decides to stay on the Enterprise as well. And because they're giving them a new Enterprise, which is the Enterprise A.
Yeah, because like, was there a movie in the series where a just Enterprise was not destroyed, or am I misremembering because they kept destroying the Enterprise in the Next Generation movies?
Um, well, okay, so the Enterprise is destroyed in three movies: The Search for Spock, Generations, and this movie. In the other movies, the Enterprise is either gets really badly damaged or isn't working properly in the case of the motion picture and the Final
Five.
Front. Yeah, and five. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
Uh, Yeah, so they get a new Enterprise, and they have something that feels like the ending of this continuity.
yeah. It did.
Like, as he's giving a speech about continuing to go out there, and
Yeah,
but like it feels like a conclusion, which makes the threats of a fourth movie all the funnier.
yeah. Yeah, I wonder if they kind of didn't keep it open ended, just in maybe just in case, like maybe we should kind of give it something of an ending, and just in case the
Well, the
movie
last
doesn't.
one, I mean, the thing with those movies is that they were never as successful as the budgets they were made for would require.
Right.
But this one in particular was just an outright bomb.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. Um, yeah, it came out in 2016, and I think it either came out before it came out right around the same time as Ghostbusters. Um, and I can't remember what else came out right around that time too, but it had some pretty stiff competition. Um, but yeah,
Right. Well, and also the previous movie in the series had been a knockoff of Khan. And I don't think that won a lot of people over.
no, you're right. Yeah, there were a lot of people who were really ticked off with the previous movie, and they're like, I don't want to go see this movie. Yeah.
Which, having never seen that one, Daniel, would you say this one is better or worse than not Khan?
This one's better. So that should tell you something about the other movie.
Oof. Yeah, like I say, this isn't a hateful movie. It's just not a Star Trek movie, properly speaking.
No, and I don't think really any of the Kelvin timeline movies are proper Star Trek movies. They are they're sci-fi action movies.
Right. Which is like Star Trek can play in that,
Yeah.
but it isn't its home.
No. Yeah, and yeah, like you were saying before, it's always been very a cerebral series. It's meant to be about the human condition and what and playing on different themes and the movies by and large tend to be adventure movies to a certain extent, but they will delve into the more cerebral philosophical stuff, and even doing like real world stuff, and in the case of uh Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, which was that whole movie was basically just an allegory for the end of the Cold War.
Right. So, like, if I had to compare this to, like, say, oh, well, let's compare it to the creator. I would say that they have different flaws.
Hmm.
Like, I would say that the creator was trying to be smarter than it actually was.
Yeah.
This movie was very comfortable living in the brain dead zone it had. brain dead zone it created for itself. It kind of had character arcs. It kind of had a story, but it was really just there for a bunch of set pieces that would look awesome.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And plenty of loud action scenes to try to keep people interested.
Yeah, I do think it's funny in retrospect that Zoe Saldana might be the most accomplished sci-fi actress of all time,
Yeah.
just because of these movies and Avatar. Like,
Yeah.
like
And
she
and yeah.
is there. Oh, is that the one I'm forgetting?
Well,
Oh, and
I was gonna
Guardians.
mention the MCU, the
Yeah,
Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah,
yeah. Although this is the only one where she isn't painted a weird color.
that's true. Yeah,
So, which is interesting because like if she had kind of had the least to do in this movie, it's almost like they broke it her and Scott and Spock up to free up room for Bones. Now that I think about it.
probably. Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's yeah,
but I say, yeah, it's a very brain dead movie. Its idea of how to make Spock sound smart is to basically make him into Mr. Data, where he comes off like a robot who doesn't understand human customs at all.
yeah, yeah. And Bones says, "Okay, I'll cut the horse shit," and Spock says, "I fail to see how excrement of any kind is relevant to our current situation."
Right. Like that is not a Spock line. Like you pointed out, that is a Data line.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, it's but again, like if I compare it to Creator, I was bored with both of them. Watching them back to back was not a good time.
yeah, yeah,
If you put a gun to my head and forced me to watch one of these again, I would probably choose the Creator just because I think that one is trying to be smart, it would be more fun to pick apart its logical inconsistencies and world building issues, or there might be things that we missed the first time around that a second viewing would give us context for.
yeah, yeah,
This is just a pile of popcorn.
yeah. It is. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, I've said all I need to say about this movie.
Yeah, it's just kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. Well, we did a super long show tonight.
Yes, thanks everyone for bearing with us as we dealt with our collective illnesses and the cinematic cancer that we have inflicted upon you.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it as always. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Ring the bell, all that good stuff. And oh, uh, we are off next week. Because DB is actually hopefully he'll be feeling better soon because he's going on vacation.
Yep, first real one in a while. So, okay, immune system, eye of the tiger time.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So no show next week, but we'll be back the following week. So take it easy, everybody.
Good night.